Everybody, we'll go ahead and get started. I'll get us kicked off with everyone's favorite part, the notice reading. Okay, it is Thursday, February 18th, and it is 12 p.m. This meeting will be conducted entirely via electronic means. On February 11th, 2021, in accordance with Utah Code 52-4-2074, I determined that conducting meetings of the Provo City Transportation and Mobility Advisory Committee with an anchor location, such as the Community and Neighborhood Services Conference Room, presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present there. These are the facts upon which I have made this determination. The World Health Organization has classified novel coronavirus disease, also known as COVID-19, as a pandemic. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention state that COVID-19 is easily spread from person to person between people who are in close contact with one another. State Public Health Order 2021-3 addresses the ongoing COVID-19 public health emergency and establishes minimum standards to address the unique circumstances in different locations. Utah County is currently listed as having a high level of coronavirus transmission as determined by the state's transmission index metrics. Physical distancing measures will be difficult to set up and maintain in the Community and Neighborhood Services Conference Room and other meeting rooms. The meeting will be available to the public for live broadcast and on-demand viewing on YouTube at youtube.com/user/Provo Channel 17 and Facebook at facebook.com/Provo Channel 17. All right. We'll do quick introductions. I'll just name everyone that's here and wave your hand. So I'm Clancy Black, TMAC chair. We've got other members of the committee, Joy McMurray, who's vice chair, Mitsu Saito, Laurie Urquiaga, who's our planning commission representative, Dave Arnold, and Jim Hamela, and also Dave Harding, who's our city council representative. So welcome everybody, thanks for being here, and thanks to staff and guests for being here. Unless there's anything else we should do first, Robert, we'll go ahead and dive into item 1, I think, Parks and Rec discussion of Regional Park.
Yes, I think that's great. And we have Lars Anderson here. He is the consultant working on the regional park, all of the engineering and things like that. So we're happy to have him. I think that Doug Robbins will probably be joining us in a little bit. My mistake, I forgot to send him the Zoom link. So he should be here soon. But Lars, we can upgrade you if you have slides to share or anything like that.
Yes, please.
Okay. Crystal, can you update Lars to a co-host so he can share his screen? Or
you should be able to now.
Okay. So just take it away and take as much time as you need. I think we probably have about 30 minutes or so planned for this. So.
Yeah, I don't think we'll take that long, but I guess it depends on your questions. So I'll get started. Can you see the slide, the first slide? Okay, I got a thumbs up, good. All right, so this is how many of you see the Provo Sports Park. It is located down by the airport. You can tell it's got great views of Provo's mountains, and it's a beautiful location. It's currently in alfalfa, and it's currently being filled. As you can tell, there's a levee right through the middle of the site, and that really dictates a lot of what's going on with this site. The whole site has to be lifted an average of 5 to 7 feet in order to make this to turn into a sports complex that we envision. Here's the master plan. Let's see if it's gonna roll for me. Yep, there it is. So this is the updated master plan. Oops, went too fast. Back again, there we go. It shows 22 fields, which will be one of the biggest soccer complexes. It will be the biggest soccer complex in the Western United States. We haven't found a bigger one yet in the entire United States, but maybe in the Eastern United States, there might be one, or down south. We haven't found one yet. It's big, 22 fields, it's a lot of fields. It's 100 acres and 3 restroom facilities, one in the north, one in the middle, and one in the south. And 1,573 parking stalls. We expect 1,800 cars per hour when a tournament is going full bore using all the fields. Of course, that'll be rare. That'll take several years to ramp up to that point, but at some point you'll probably have that many vehicles coming through. There's 60 ADA stalls included in the design, which complies with Provo City's requirements for parking. This next slide just shows a blow up of the fields. It shows the first 15 fields, so you get a feel for the layout. This northern area is a maintenance area, and then and it's just field after field. These can be used for lacrosse as well as soccer, and of course you can have other events. They're very flat fields and good access. We've got the roundabout down here, which is complying with Provo's master plan, tying into a road that's yet unnamed. 2470 West is the north-south arterial, and then we tie into this parking lot as well. So as far as circulation goes, it works pretty well from that point of view. This shows the southern portion, the additional 7 fields down in the south. Now these areas we call overflow parking. It's because we're not sure what to do with them. Yeah, we don't need them for fields. They're too small for fields. They could be developed. Could sell them off to private developers. They could be, we're looking at maybe doing a pickleball complex. We're looking at other options for these small areas. Generally speaking, it's going to be a soccer complex, as you can tell, for 90% of it. Any questions about the design or the impacts of the design? Okay, I'll keep going. I wanted to show just a couple 3D views we have of the fields. They're kind of interesting. We're using these large nets between the fields to keep one field from bothering the other field too much. And that also is really important with lacrosse, because as you know, those lacrosse balls can go pretty fast, pretty hard, and can do some damage if somebody was walking by behind the goal unsuspectingly. Bad enough when you're on the sidelines, and those kids are fast and good at what they do. So this shows what those nets look like and how tall they'll be. We did the similar design at the Salt Lake City rack, they call it, where there's soccer and lacrosse as well. And that's where these pictures are taken from. So I'm going to dive into the traffic, if you're okay with that. Okay, so on this slide, we have the 2025 view of what the traffic would look like. And this is if all 22 fields, at the time, you can see it's a different design. We rearranged the fields, but if the entire area was being utilized at the same time, these would be the turning movements, the counts in 2025. And it does fail at the intersection without a signal. So the intersection of 2470 West and Lakeview Parkway, without a signal, it fails. With a signal, it operates at C or better. So you can see 396 right turns in the peak hour in 2025, where it jumps up to 476 in 2040. So a lot of traffic. It's going to be a fair amount of traffic. We've worked with the city in designing 2770 West also to be built in conjunction with 2470 West because of the traffic. And now there's a connector road that connects between the two roadways off of Lakeview Parkway to move some of that traffic off of the parkway, that people that are just moving through the site can do that without having to go out to the arterial.
Lars, can I ask a quick question for clarification? Yes. What do you think the probability of the entire site being utilized at the same time is? Like, how often would that happen?
A couple times a year at the most.
Okay. I think that's important. Thanks.
Yeah. Once in a while, they're going to have a big tournament where they start on Thursday and you're going to use all the fields. And then on Friday, you're going to use maybe 3/4 of the fields because some of the teams don't make it through and they leave. And then on Saturday, you're going to be using half or less or fewer of the fields. And they're going to move up to these northern fields that are a little bit more championship style. And so on those Saturdays, you're still going to have a lot of people coming to watch the games, you know, because it's going to be, I mean, this is a big complex, and it's pretty awesome that the city's building this. Nobody else has anything like this. So it'll be popular, but it won't be, we're looking at worst case scenario, and just because you have to, and it'll be extremely rare.
Okay.
Lars, I have a question. You don't have any volume on the north side?
Yes, up to the neighborhood right now, this road does not connect.
Oh, it's not connected.
Right now, the city's looking at connecting it. They don't have that in the plan right now.
Oh, okay.
But they do have the sewer line going through there. And so the intent is to connect that road going north to the neighborhood someday.
Yeah, so at this moment, you have only 2 access.
Correct.
Locations.
You're correct. And right now, today, there's only 1 access, but that will change shortly because the city is already putting in the storm drain line for 2770, and they'll be paving this because BYU is developing their property, and they're participating in that development.
What are they going to build there?
You mean BYU or the
BYU?
BYU is it's going to take them some time because they have to fill this whole site, and it's going to take. I don't know what their time frame like. I know on the park side, it's going to take about 3 years to fill the site with enough fill material to build on it because it's so low.
I can jump in with a little bit of information there, Dr. Seto.
Yeah.
So BYU has actually been bringing in quite a bit of fill as we speak and working on that site. The plan is to move their landscaping operations nursery from where it is currently on University Avenue down to this site.
I see. Thank you.
Lars, I have a question as well. You described what things would be like during peak usage times. What would you say is a more typical usage pattern that we'll see more often?
The first 10 fields would be used the most. So because they're contiguous and it's easy to program them. So that's what Sean Whitaker with the Parks Department said he would probably use first would be 10 fields regularly. It's designed in such a way, which is the beauty of having 22 fields is that if you have a tournament one weekend on 10 fields and they trash them, which happens a lot, and the needs to recover, you can then the next weekend have a tournament on a separate 10 fields and let those other fields recover, which is a big bonus here because with smaller parks, they trash the field so much that the tournaments come in, they don't want to play because there's big holes in front of the goalie posts, and you've seen it at Art Dye and American Fork and some of those other places.
And what percentage of the year or what seasons of the year do you anticipate these fields being used?
We anticipate it being used heavily June, July, and August with tournaments during those 3 months. Of course, on the fringes, they'll start playing as early as March and April, and they'll play as long as October. They're not planning on lighting these fields at this time. That's maybe in the future, though, but right now we're not planning on it. Good questions.
So we've got this site plan. Is this like in final design, or what's the status of the overall project?
I'll move up to show the overall so you can see this was just for the traffic. So let's see if that moves this. I think it did. Yeah. Okay. So it is at 90% design. We're going to the CRC right now. On the fields and the parking lots, this area, the areas in yellow are not designed at all. So those areas, we're still working on some concepts there, but the rest of it, is at 90%, and they're filling the site because it's going to take so long, and it's such a massive area. It will take them literally years to fill.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I just want to mention this is hopefully already been brought up, and I don't know the approval process, but I just want to mention 2470 West is in our master plan as a neighborhood active transportation corridor. So I just want to make sure that has been or will be considered in that design.
Yes, in fact, the water supply is coming from the neighborhood and will continue as 24/70 as an arterial leading up to the neighborhood. I just don't, but personally, I don't know the time frame when the city is going to complete that connection.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I have a question related to what the general plan is and what's happening around this sports park. It is located not far from the airport. What's planned for the properties contiguous to the sports park other than the BYU piece that has already been discussed?
Let me jump in with that one. So property to the west of this site is actually in the airport protection zone, and we're actually working on a set of zones that are airport related activities. So things that you would typically see around and in conjunction with an airport of our size. Those types of opportunities and uses is what you would see to the west. To the east of this, primarily residential with nodal commercial mixed use development.
And do the traffic numbers that have been presented to us reflect that kind of anticipated infill activity in the future, or are these numbers only for what's expected from full utilization of the field?
I think I can answer that. The numbers that we presented are only for full utilization of the field. Did not take into account any other land uses. And the group that we had model this also did your master plan years ago. So they did have that background data, but they focused just on the fields itself, 1,800 cars per hour.
Okay.
And Jim, I'm not sure. I noticed that we don't have anybody from Public Works on right now. So I think that's a great question that if it doesn't get answered,
If you
we'll
want
follow up.
Robert, if you want to re-ask that, sorry, I think we all show that the meeting was starting at 12:30. That's why none of us are on. So, but I was here, so I am available. So if there's a question you want to re-ask, let me know.
Oh, thanks, Shane. So Jim was asking, Lars just presented traffic count information that's specifically related to the regional park. How in your overall counts does that kind of integrate with traffic flow, traffic counts with the build out of kind of the west side area, like adjacent properties and stuff like that?
So that is built in. So when we'd recently updated our master plan. And as part of that master plan, it takes all the land uses that are shown or planned. And they use the regional travel demand model, which MAG is the houser of that model. So what we have then we model that in the master plan based on the future land uses, which is in the general plan, those things that go ahead and then project what that traffic would be. And so when who was it? Hales Engineering.
Yes.
When they did or have done their traffic plan, they take that into consideration, look at that and see what additional may need to be included because of this specific type development. So what I would have in this case, the regional park, that project, we would have them specifically look at how that would impact because of the size, how that would impact surrounding areas as well as more of a refined area. For instance, Lakeview Parkway, some of the surrounding intersections and how that would impact those areas, or if there would be a significant increase in traffic. But right now, these roads, these major ones, the 2470 West, Lakeview Parkway, the 1150, you can kind of see the roundabout there on 2470 West, which would be the 11 continuation 11. Those are already sized as larger collector streets that would be able to handle this additional traffic.
Lars, can I ask one question really quick? Sorry. Are there any like concession areas or like spots for food trucks or anything like that planned into the master plan? I can't see them specifically, but just wanted to know because that'd be a lot of traffic, extra traffic moving in and out.
Yes. So right now, the plan has been a large plaza here in the center where food trucks could come, and we were going to do a curb cut here so trucks could come up onto this concrete pad, and they were going to have minimal concessions there. So the city was not interested in doing anything that was beyond just selling, you know, candy bars and cans of Diet Coke. So the food trucks would come in to actually cook things. So the concession buildings will not have currently and the concession buildings aren't designed yet. So we just did the horizontal design to get the utilities in and parking lots and storm drain, that kind of thing. But yeah, the buildings will be bathrooms, storage, and then light concessions, I'd call it.
Okay, thanks.
I was going to mention something that Shane brought up. I'm going to just go to the very last slide. And he talked about how the traffic demand models included. This table shows that. It shows the travel demand in 2020, the existing, what the existing plus the project, what the mitigation would be with the signal, and future existing plus the project, exactly what he was, it just backs up what Shane was saying, is that they take the existing background and add the project to it. And the recommendation is to install a signal at 2470 West. And Shane has been working on the design of that. I don't know, Shane, where you are in that process, but.
Yep, that is the plan. In the process, yes. So we do have already signal conduit to accommodate a future signal there. So when this project comes online and we start to receive the necessary, well, opens up and we're building the road, we'll be putting that signal in. So
yeah, when it warrants, because that's state laws, it has to warrant.
Correct.
Right on that.
Yep.
Robert, to answer your question with food a little bit, also on the future land use map, it does show neighborhood mixed use abutting 2470 West up against it. So there could be the potential of having more food establishments there on a regular basis than solely food trucks.
Cool. Thank you.
Is 1150 the only east or the only road that goes all the way through and hits this, other than?
Yeah, so
I guess it's 6 South. Is it just 1150 and 6 South and
correct.
Lakeview Parkway?
Yeah, so those are the two major. Those would be the two major collector or minor arterial streets. They're the same cross section, but yeah, those would go 1150 South would go all the way.
So 1150 is where he has his cursor, right?
Correct, and that fits with the plan. Correct.
Right, and where does 6 South hit? Up above?
6 South. So yeah, we will connect 2470 West. We will connect that all the way to the north, 6 South up there. Yeah, so that would connect just
so it'll
that. Yes.
And so it will connect there, and then it.
As part
are
of
we
this,
ever gonna straighten it to center, or is it always gonna have that jog?
Right now, I don't have. It's all based on funding. The plan would, to eventually to get the jog and get that, more of a straight shot. Some of that, you got the school that is there as well,
right?
And so that's a consideration that we would need to address in the future. Right now, it would be just to 6 South, and then
okay, all right,
get that in the future.
I just want to point out the chat that Dave put on here, and Dave, this is exactly what I was thinking about. We've got those active transportation corridors designated, and we do need to make sure when we design and build those that we plan for that based on the master plan. it sounds like maybe we haven't designed the specific road yet. So
No, and that's a good one, Clancy, that we are considering that. That's some of the ongoing discussions internally, both for 1150 South, because that does show as an active transportation type corridor. Yep. It would fit to get into that regional park. Also 2470 West, we're looking at, as the city, we designed that road. We're looking for maybe additional, maybe a larger type trail or sidewalk, maybe a 10-foot side on the west side along the, along the street there and up to 6 South, so that it connects to the trail system on Lakeview Parkway. So yes, we're considering those as we move forward as well.
As we were in the West Side planning meetings that we had, I don't know, maybe a year ago, to try to figure out, it led to the zoning or the kind of the long-term plan for the kind of the area between the sports field and where kind of the development ends over on 1600 West, I guess it is. We talked about this sports park somehow matching the community that it's inside of. And so it's just this large soccer field complex that brings people from all over the place. So my question, it's mainly, so there are clearly 3 future playgrounds planned here, the top, the middle, and the bottom. What about bicycle parking? And has this been designed for, because most of the people that come here will come in cars, but the local neighborhood, people from the Lakeview, from the trail system, or for this community that's going to build to the right. I actually live by that ball field. See there's a ball field to the west on 1150, so I know this neighborhood really well. So but the ball field wasn't built for the community in which it's in, the neighborhood in which it's in. It's just like, it's like a no-fly zone for my community or for my neighborhood, right? And there's a desire for this sports field, this sports complex, to actually feel like it belongs in the neighborhood and not just being plopped there by the city to host regional tournaments, right? And one way, of course, we're transportation, so I'm not going to go into how we change the actual design, but from a connection point of view, I'm very interested in the transportation, the active transportation coming in from 1150, how it connects to the trail system, what kind of bicycle provisions there's going to be. Is it a destination for us if we're walking there or riding our bicycles, and what provisions have been put into the plan from a transportation point of view? Are the bathrooms going to be open to the people on the trail? Are they going to be closed? Those kinds of things. Has there been any thought given to that?
I think I can answer part of that question. I won't be able to answer how the bathrooms will be maintained, but I can tell you that Scott Henderson and Doug Robbins met with me just this week when we turned in our 90% plans on the rest of the complex. The 90% plans are intended, like I mentioned earlier, to make sure the utilities jive with all the utilities that are going in 2470 West and the sewer line going through here. So we had to get to that point. And they've directed me to redesign this area down here that was overflow parking to consider more of the neighborhood needs. So that's where some bike racks would go. These fields would be more for neighborhood use, some pickleball courts that the neighborhood could use. And that has access from the trail along Lakeview Parkway, as well as 1150 South and 2470 West. So this corner is becoming, if you want to call it that, the neighborhood park. More so than the regional park, which is the rest of these fields. So this would be where the pickup games could occur and more neighborhood feel to it, if that helps. Okay.
Shane, as really the only roads being built here, 2470 and whatever the other one is.
2770.
Yeah, but 2470 is the one that's the active transportation designated that goes north-south, right?
Correct.
What will that street design look like? What's it going to be like for a bicyclist and a pedestrian?
And see, that's where the flexibility that we have, Dave, in our typical section. So we have our typical collector, our section on there. We have that designated as an active transportation corridor. As we do this design, like I said, we're considering, okay, the use for this makes sense to maybe add, a larger sidewalk trail system along the east side of this road to help accommodate that. That similar discussion needs to happen for 10 or 1150 on those discussions as you build and you do that stuff to the east, right? As we connect through that neighborhood, when we start doing that, that develops out. We have development starting to come in there. That's when we're going to have that discussion about, okay, developer, this is on our active transportation. This goes to our regional soccer park, and here's the typical section. However, we need to make sure as part of that, we got to accommodate these active transportation features. And that again would be bike lanes, bike facilities, whatever kind of trail system or pedestrian facilities to accommodate that during that time. That's when we would have those discussions, Dave. So right now there's opportunity right now on 2470 to say, okay, what do we want to see on 2470 and maybe on that interior part of what we said. Right now it's just kind of what we first started with, Dave, was the adding of, and we worked with the Parks Department for the roundabouts and the functionality that we just need to get that in now for the functionality of those. We had discussions about that interior road of 1150 that goes through the park, and about narrowing the section, the lanes and helping with speeds. What else did we talk about, Lars? We talked about, and this is kind of where we got, what else did we had some other things. I apologize.
We really talked a lot about this roundabout and
yes,
and how well that functions there. And
I know it was the on-street parking.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
How do we want to deal with, because this is going to be based on the future and what this could be. We wanted to make sure that this doesn't just become a major mess of on-street parking. So we've had those discussions to limit, to do things where like that interior narrow and to limit that sight distance issues, allow that mobility through the park. So there's still somewhat going on a little bit because the city's kind of taken managing the design of those streets, but we have discussed, those are some of the options that we've discussed.
Yeah.
Okay, so the light at 2470 and the Parkway, did you take into account the bicycle and pedestrian traffic that's crossing that?
Yeah, so it's going to be one-sided. So that intersection is not designed yet, right? The issue that we have right now is there may be an interim, just because of funding. I can't build the full width of that Lakeview Parkway all the way down to there, the four lane section and those kind of things. So we're still trying to figure out what that would be, and then the future on how we would connect that trail with in and across Lakeview Parkway, what that would be. Right now, it's a signal, but what's the best way to do that? Right now, the bike facilities on Lakeview Parkway, we don't have, it's shoulder. It's not, that's not a bike lane. So really the bike facilities is that trail system. And so it would be probably most likely just a connection on one side of that intersection.
Okay.
It wouldn't be, you wouldn't be able to cross that on multiple legs across Lakeview Parkway. It'd be one side.
Yeah, the one thing I'd like to point out to all of us in TMAC is the opportunity this creates for loops for the trail into this neighborhood.
Yep.
2470, make sure I get them right. 2470 creates an opportunity to go up to Center and across and hit Lakeview Parkway. 1150 and 600 provide loop opportunities. And so if we do this right, this particular neighborhood will have some interesting bicycle and pedestrian facilities for the residents to take these trails on loops if we do it right.
Yep. Yes, you're right. Right now it's somewhat disconnected, right? I mean, we have the trail, but that neighborhood that's, up around 6th South area, it's tough for them to get down to that trail system right now. There's nothing that connects that.
That's right.
This is something as a priority for us, Dave, is to get that connection made.
Okay, thank you. I'm excited about this project. So don't take my questions as lack of excitement.
No, not at all. It is
So-
a great project.
I do live in 1150. We've always known it's going to have more traffic and connect, but this is going to be great connectivity over to the park. This is going to be a good thing for this neighborhood.
And I can say, like, we've had internal conversations between, Public Works and the regional park, because we plan this to be very successful. And if you've ever been to the St. George tournaments they have down there in the regional areas that are very successful, the traffic and the mobility of those, you can see when it's well done and when it's not. And so we have been really trying to make sure that we get this right. Because this is going to be a really major, the anticipation to be a major regional facility. So,
Yeah. I have one more question just for curiosity's sake, but before I ask, is there anything else we need to cover on this item in terms of transportation? Lars, specifically, I guess. Okay. So this question, like I said, it's merely curiosity. We are the transportation group, but I'm just curious from the city's perspective, what's the strategy for these? I mean, do these tournaments pay large reservation fees that's beneficial to the city, or is it a general economic driver just that brings people into the city? I don't know who could answer that, but I'm just kind of curious what the strategic approach is for things like this.
I think I can answer that. In the financial analysis, tournaments bring as much as $30 million a year into the city from this park. So it's a substantial amount. The direct payments that they make to the city will pay for the maintenance of the facility. You don't get your initial investment back with the direct fees, but you get it back overall with the city because of the hotel fees, the restaurant fees, the airport fees, all those things. So the financial analysis was pretty substantial payback over time.
Well, very cool. Thanks, Lars.
Yeah.
Okay, well, unless anyone has something else, I think we'll wrap up that item then. Does that sound good?
Okay, I'll jump off your
Sorry,
call. Thank you.
I don't know if David
Lars,
wants to.
appreciate it. And we will move on to item 2, which is our continuing discussion of the evaluation criteria for Center Street. I have some thoughts and comments on the evaluation criteria that were sent last time, but Robert or Shane, where do we want to start with today's discussion?
I think we should start with your comments.
Okay.
absolutely. I do want to just give you a heads up, just so you know, we have had a somewhat of a kickoff meeting with UDOT, and they're
On the signal timing thing?
Yep. They're going to be looking at multiple things of retiming kind of that downtown area, 100 North, things that could help improve. Everything's kind of on the table to say that, to see what we could do to help towards that intent statement. So just heads up, that is moving forward. When we start to get information back from their work, we will come to the TMAC committee and kind of present their findings and some of the benefits, maybe some of the negatives and those kind of things. So just heads up, that is moving forward.
Cool. I actually had an idea that I want to add to the project list, and that would be good to bring up in that discussion with UDOT, Shane. I'll share my realization, my eureka moment story.
You bet.
So we were walking downtown to get something to eat somewhere. I don't remember, but we pushed the ped button and didn't get the walk signal. And that happens, sometimes those fail, or you push it too late, or whatever. We were on Freedom or third or fourth, I don't remember.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, I had the realization or the thought that if this is really a pedestrian corridor, at least in the signals we control, we should give that walk symbol, the walk signal and countdown for pedestrians on every cycle, whether they push that button or not. I mean, if pedestrians are really the priority, we should make it do that just to make it a little bit easier, where if I got there late and missed the button, I still have that countdown. I still have that signal that's telling me how long I have to cross. So anyway, that's an idea I want to add to that list and throw into this signal retiming discussion with UDOT.
And we can do that. That is something that we can have that discussion as you do that, and you give the priority to the pedestrians. That means you're going to minimize timing in certain directions for vehicles. And so what that ends up meaning is, one, coordination along maybe Freedom gets a lot worse. And so what that means is either we get a lot of stacking, or potentially we get a hot spot for air quality issues. So there's some benefit, and there's some and that's absolutely, these are the things that we kind of let UDOT know. I think we've kind of had that discussion with them. These are the things that I've kind of brought up. We've asked that to look at that. One of those is to look at that, Clancy. So
yeah, good. That sounds great. Thanks. And yeah, even if there are trade-offs, I think we need to give that serious thought if we're really going to prioritize pedestrians.
So you haven't done the study yet, but do you anticipate that the volume will drop enough in trying to move the traffic to the north that won't be an issue, and we could give that priority, that pedestrian priority, or do you think it'll still be an issue?
I can tell you it's hard to change behavior to make people want to take the lefts and the right. And and that's what we've had. So, we've asked UDOT, hey, let's open up Fifth West and those things, look, and make it really, really, really accommodative to make that, if you're eastbound or whatever, to make that movement. And that means that we may make the other movements a lot less desirable, to say the least, right?
Yeah.
To help change that behavior. So UDOT is like, that is not typically how we, signal or do the signal timing, but they're on board. Just so you know, it's something very unusual. And so they're going to say, well, that is unusual to make the signal not perform at its optimum, to say that,
Yeah.
And so we are. How well that will happen, I can't really tell you, Dave. I think that maybe we'll kind of assess it as it happens. And so how much traffic may or may not come off. I really, this is something new for UDOT as well, I can tell you.
The other thing I might encourage you to look at is to look at the pedestrian detection solutions that are out there, the remote, the above ground.
Yep.
Waytronics doesn't make those, but I have several competitors that make those. And then it doesn't matter whether the person's pushed the button or not. At least it knows that a pedestrian's there waiting.
Yep. Right now we do it for, the detection, we do use Wavtronics quite a bit. I don't know if we have any on pedestrian signals yet. There's been looked at. I know the state has looked at it. I do know they have them and have used them on the, what is that major system that goes through Utah County? The Murdoch Canal Trail. There's certain intersections that they have set up, I think through Orem, and there's some others that do detect pedestrians and give them priority for that situation. So it is being used, but I'll suggest that as well.
And I don't know how well they work, since we don't make one, right? I've never paid attention to how well the competitors' products are on that, but I know they're out there.
It sounds like you're going to be breaking it into a new opportunity here.
Well, we haven't entered that market because there's some liability associated with it.
There is.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we don't have a product for that now.
And I want to say I appreciate these suggestions. These are the things we will take back to UDOT and say, hey, well, these are the things, everything that's on the table. This is some of the suggestions we've gotten back.
Okay.
I want to add my voice to support Clancy's idea there, because I really do think we want to encourage pedestrians as much as possible on center, and to the extent we can make that inconvenient for anybody who doesn't have Center Street as a destination, I think that's a positive, even though UDOT might look at it as not being a positive. I mean, I don't want to discourage people who are going to their restaurant from being able to use those roads, but the through traffic, I think as much as we can get off is what everybody wants.
Absolutely. And I can let you know, Lori, I appreciate that, because we did, and we asked them to look at Center Street to making it so that it timing wise said, don't even look at that. One option would, don't even look at the cars. We don't care what happens with them. Let's make it so that it's completely pedestrian friendly as much as we possibly can. That means that we're going to suffer on coordination through Center Street, right? It's not going to be smooth. It's going to be choppy and those kind of things. And said, can make that as bad as you make that as one of the, made that as bad as you can from a vehicle standpoint. That may help encourage First North. However, with that though, you have the streets that run through north, south through Center Street, such 2nd West, 5th West, University Avenue. We need to be somewhat careful though there on making sure that we don't cause issues northwest, severe issues northwest, especially at peak times and those things. So that will have to be still somewhat balanced a little bit. And still may have to really somewhat accommodate north-south vehicle movement.
That's understandable. I think you can use 3rd West and 4th West to inconvenience people.
Yep.
And there's lots of, I mean, this, Shane, but just so everyone else knows, there's also lots of options for different timing by the time of day. We can optimize north-south from 4 to 6 p.m. and give preference to pedestrians all the other times.
Yep. And we'll have numerous coordination schedules. We do, depending on time of day and the amount of traffic. And that's the what they're going through right now, based on current conditions. And
the other thing that they're going to take a look at, and this is harder to gauge directly through modeling, but you can kind of look at trends. The other thing that they're concerned is, as they do this, the timing to not give preference to vehicle movements on Center Street is, and it already happens, and they're just wanting to not exacerbate the problem, is make it to where everybody's speeding up to make it through the much shorter green light that they have.
Yeah.
Everybody's speeding to try to get through at the same time. So they'll be looking at that also.
Dave Harding, do you want to go ahead and take a minute and share your comment?
Thank you. Appreciate it. So listening to Mr. Mills last time, he mentioned that kind of that sheet is kind of a list of all the different ideas, whether or not they'll ever be implemented or whatever. And I mentioned there's a couple other thoughts that have been discussed that I didn't see on it. And there's a whole kind of spectrum, but for instance, one would be to reduce Center Street down to 1 lane in each direction. And you look at kind of the impact of that. And when I say Center Street, I should say, between 5th West and whatever the eastern boundary is, 2nd East or whatever. But if that was the case, then as you're getting off the freeway, you're headed east into there, there might be a longer line to go straight in, but because there's only 1 lane that goes in, but now, whatever makes the most sense, maybe you have 2 left turn lanes, or maybe you have 2 right turn lanes or whatever. So that's the point at which there's kind of that stacking, and people have a good choice. Like, do I want to take First North, or do I want to stay in this line longer and go directly onto Center? But once you've passed that kind of split point, I think Mr. Arnold was saying earlier, like perhaps we were, if we shift enough traffic off, this becomes much less of an issue because we just have less throughput, of vehicles on Center. And so I think that kind of alleviates a lot of that issue if we're able to divert more of that traffic up there, and we can do it kind of at one point at the start of that, rather than like deprioritizing all the way through and making it painful all the way through. You kind of give the people the option right up front and make it easy to go to First North. And then after that, there's just less cars, they're less push to get through that green light, in that short amount of time. And anyway, so
Dave, it's something like that. We've talked to UDOT because obviously, that some of the stuff is on state roads.
Mm-hmm.
They are highly accommodative. Just so you guys know, they are highly accommodative because we've made the suggestions. We at some point are going to start moving forward with some substantial type trial features, and one of those could be, doing something as a trial of bringing that to one lane. And just watch it and see what happens. What that's going to require is we're going to have to do some things on the state roads like Fifth West back to the west down Center Street to get that down appropriately. And so they were accommodated just so they are on board on trial type systems. And when we are ready to move forward with those kind of things and those trials, I say, let's do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think I saw your comment, Joy. I'll get to that in a second. Thank you. I want to bring this up because it goes with Dave's comments that with this timing work that is underway with UDOT and that rollout, I think it does present a significant opportunity to try out the idea of closing a lane where, I don't know who had this up, but the city could engage in some public outreach to educate people about the timing changes and how First North should be optimized. And at the same time, try one of these experiments where we close a lane either direction so that people have the education aspect of knowing, First North is better now. And at the same time, we close the lane to further incentivize that. I think it presents a significant opportunity when that timing is done to try these out. So I'm going to keep bringing that up every meeting because I'd like for us to take advantage of that if we can.
And I would, maybe before you go to that level, Clancy, we may want to have various stakeholders along or representative stakeholders along Center Street come in and maybe get their thoughts as we do those things of how that may be a benefit or a significant impact to their operations or how they as a business or whatever stakeholder uses those facilities.
Definitely.
Because as you close one lane, even you may substantially affect parking. I can tell you will, and we want to make sure that everybody is fully understanding of what that and we're ready to move forward with that. So
definitely, the last little piece of that comment is that with the city's plan to allow a developer to redevelop the old city center block, that gives us an opportunity to completely rebuild an entire block plus of Center Street. And so if we were to go in a direction of just one lane or other significant changes, we'd want to make sure that while that is happening, we get it right the first time with that redevelopment happening. So again,
you're right. And you probably need to get a plan together. So whoever a plan or adopted something through the council or those kind of things, and maybe that recommendation starts through TMAC to say, hey, this is kind of what we would like as that develop out from a street perspective. This is the improvements that we would like to see happen along there.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go ahead and jump to the evaluation criteria thoughts. I'll start out with a few of mine. My first thought was that I think number 2 and number 8, we could remove one of those. I feel like those are essentially the same thing. So any thoughts on that from the rest of the committee?
I agree. I noticed the same thing.
Well, as long as The second one captures that fact that downtown is a destination, not a through.
Mhm.
The other one is actually it's the livability of the streets themselves. So as long as those two things are, because in my mind they're a little separate. We want to make sure that we design this so that people aren't driving through downtown, they're coming as a destination. Number 8 is the livability of the streets. The streets are extensions of what's going on inside, the benches, the lighting, all of that. And so that would be my only hesitancy there of combining them.
So Clancy, excuse me, are you suggesting that 2 and 8 be removed entirely and not be
I
consolidated?
thought it'd be grouped together.
Yeah, I would say like maybe we reword 2 to say enhances the destination experience and aesthetics of downtown, possibly.
Good idea. Because I agree with Dave Arnold on that there's experience as a destination and there's the aesthetics of the situation.
Yeah, and I see your point as well, Dave, and I think I prefer to combine them because I don't think when we're rating something, I think it'll be hard for us to separate something that accomplishes 2 but not 8. I feel like they're similar enough that combining them. But if we feel they need to stay separate, I'm open to that.
I think you can put them together. Just make sure that both of those items are
in there. Just change the wording and make it.
Yeah.
And similar things I noticed, like number 1 and number 6 is related to safety, sort of, overall grouping. And the 3 and 7 is more like access. And the 4 and 5 is construction scheduling related. So, and also number 3, pedestrian are the priority, but I wanted to have some kind of word like active transportation, because we want to provide good access and safety for bicyclists.
You mean for number 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar thought. Like, I mean, I thought of maybe rewording it as maintains vehicle traffic but prioritizes active modes.
Active transportation modes.
So I think that's an important discussion to have. That we've always talked about, and there's also different thoughts on this. That are we putting bicyclists, scooter riders, and pedestrians all on the same equality level on Center Street?
Out of that, pedestrian number 1, but I wanted to have to emphasize that active transportation mode, because when you say the multiple modes of transportation, then some people are thinking about basically the automobile type things. So multiple modes of transportation and are accommodated, including active transportation modes. Out of that, pedestrian would be the safety. It would be the utmost important, something like that. Because we've been talking like David, you're passionate, both Dave, bicyclist, and we've discussed a lot about the bicycle access in this town. And the Center Street, again, if it's the destination, if people can go by bicycle, because you can say pedestrians, but the pedestrian will come there and park somewhere. This is related to parking also. So, but the bicycle people, from their house to downtown, it's straight. They don't go to parking and then walk. So a little bit of extra emphasis on pedestrians compared to other modes, typical motorized mode.
I put in the chat box if y'all want to open and look at that what I thought might be an option for number 3. I think, and like Robert said, this is worth discussion. I think it has been clear from the business community that we want to keep, we're going to keep vehicle traffic on Center Street. We're not getting rid of it. But we want active uses to be prioritized. So that's why I kind of thought this wording might be good, because it does highlight that multiple modes will be there, but gives us the priority to pedestrians or cyclists. I don't know. I'm curious what everyone's thoughts are on this.
I like both what Clancy and Mitsu said. Having been in large cities a fair amount, I've noticed that they've passed a lot of rules around scooters and bicycles, conflicts with pedestrians. So they've clearly, when the volume goes up, there starts to be conflict between the pedestrians and the scooters and the bicyclists. Mm-hmm. So clearly we all want this to be an active transportation corridor and I think scooters are part of that, bicycles are a part of that, walking is a part of that. But I think other cities have learned that there are conflicts between these other modes of transportation, even taking cars out of the situation. I don't have any answers. Mm-hmm. But I do agree that I think pedestrians probably are the priority, because if we get a scooter or a bicycle, if we design it wrong and pedestrians don't feel safe, we will probably not like what happened. There's something. So I don't know if there's something you can learn, if maybe Rob and Robert and Shane, if you can learn from other cities so that we do it right.
Yeah, and the thing that always concerns me is I think we are definitely 100% on board with accommodation of the active transportation. The thing is, with your downtown, what is the downtown, right? A destination, but what is that destination? It is the businesses, right? It's the economic development that is there. And so the things that we do or maybe not do, we got to be very cognizant of making sure that we do not do things that would hinder that economic development, that businesses that support the downtown. And so we got to make sure that those stakeholders, that they're again on board with a lot of these things that we're discussing, and making sure, because we're supportive of, again, all these things, but they are a significant portion of what goes on in the downtown.
Yeah, well, without them, there is no downtown.
So. Correct. So that's why I say, and I've had discussions with, eliminating cars. I think they're on board, but they we want to be careful that we're not eliminating or making it tough for all vehicles to get through there, and so there's a balance, and we're trying to get to that point.
Well, if I understood the Downtown Alliance when they came about a year ago, the message was don't close the road.
Yep.
But maybe over time it can just kind of shrink and go away, but let's let that naturally happen.
Correct.
Yeah, they made it clear that almost every situation where they closed traffic entirely was not successable. So they
right.
And one of the other ones that they said was parking. Yeah. They were, and as we go to a single lane or those things, that probably would be start to eliminating parking on, the amount of parking. So as I say, we gotta kind of, it's a very fine balance.
And here's the thing: if we accomplish number 1 and number 6, if pedestrians feel safe and comfortable, and if we effectively manage vehicle speed, we could have as many cars as we want down there, if those 2 are accomplished.
Well, let me help you. This is UDOT will be starting the interchange study in the next few months. I've had conversations. They're moving forward, getting contracting to move forward with that. One of the things as part of that study, I would encourage you to, as they go through that, to look what happens when an interchange, because they will model this, they'll show that as an interchanges go in and the different options go forward, see what happens to Center Street, see how much or potentially, those what we call the the commuter through Center Street, see how much of that comes off or could potentially could come off based on the options that they present. Because if that does go in, you could immediately have that dramatic effect that could start guiding us to do these things, these bigger things that you're talking about. So, and timing, you know what I mean? And timing of those things. So what I'm saying is there's Center Street itself, but there's these other regional projects, and that is similar to UTA with the South. And they should be coming. I've asked them to come to TMAC, as an outreach as they're doing the South Utah County corridor study for tracks and front runners into the South County that will come down 5th West. So they're looking at putting those facilities down 5th West and how that would interact with Center Street. And that study is going on right now and may help you look at these things and say, maybe we need to reevaluate based on some of these regional things that are coming through.
So, I guess I'm wondering what we're thinking we want to do with number 3 here.
Number 3, how about adding, but prioritize active modes, comma, the pedestrians receiving the highest priority, something like that.
I wanted to just really quickly, kind of as a reminder, this is what I brought up on your screen now. Did it change for you all? Oh, just one second.
We still see the Word doc.
Now did it change?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the Center Street policy intent statement that council did, and then TMAC added some comments to this, and this is TMAC's recommendation. I just wanted to point out a couple things that, in this vision statement, it's a safe place for people to gather, eat, stroll. They want to spend time here. Business wants to locate here. It's safe for pedestrians, and it's not a thoroughfare. It prioritizes pedestrians and walkability. So I just bring this up from the perspective of the way that I've interpreted this and what it kind of says to me, and this is just Robert's opinion, that Center Street is a place where we all want to get to, but when we get there, the priority is that we're walking around there, that it's our experience as we're pedestrians in this space that really enhances the experience of it. So if we're going to if we're talking about putting active modes of transportation on an equal playing field as being a pedestrian, I just want to make sure that is that congruent with what this policy intent statement is saying?
Robert, thank you for that comment. That really was the basis for my wanting to make a comment here. It seems to me that the first item ought to be in that list that you had up a moment ago, that the proposed project prioritizes pedestrians, rather than having it be a tag on to a third bullet point. Because everything we have said to date and everything we've heard from the city council to date is that that's what this area is to be, is an area that is used primarily by pedestrians. Therefore, whatever project is being evaluated should be evaluated first as to whether it prioritizes pedestrians. And we can add then in a bullet 2 that we want to accommodate other active modes of transportation, but to have any statement that suggests that the active modes of transportation ought to be equal to or on the same level of priority as pedestrians, I think takes us away from where we have been in our thinking for some time.
So I should clarify a bit. When I've said active modes, I've included pedestrians as an active mode. And from some people's comments, maybe not all of us are doing that. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a good point, Clancy. But I think to David's earlier point that if we include an active pedestrian, bicycle, scooter, there can be conflicts that arise among those active modes of transportation.
Right, and the third bullet here really highlights that, prioritizes PEDs and then includes everything else in the accommodation group. They all yield to pedestrians. Yeah.
Is the list up again? Oh, there it is. So I might suggest that the list be the proposed project number 1 prioritizes pedestrians, comma, and accommodates other modes of active transportation, so that it's emphasized that pedestrians are the primary use. And then that number 2 focus on the destination experience and the aesthetics of downtown, because it seems to me those are the 2 most important values that we're trying to ensure are pursued in whatever project is being considered for the future.
Yeah, I kind of typed up what I think you said, Jim, there in the chat box. I don't know if that's right, but I kind of like that idea. We kind of flip the sentence around for number 3 to make it an active statement and put the pedestrian part first. Prioritizes pedestrian traffic and accommodates other modes.
Yeah.
I also like Saito's suggestion from earlier to kind of his grouping of how they all group together, and I think Clancy said it a couple times. Robert, it might be helpful if you could take these 8 statements and put the ones together that are similar, like number 1 and number 6 are related. Saito could probably go through that again, but the number 5 and number 4 are kind of ways to get there. Yeah, I think it'd helpful if you could group them kind of that way. Saito laid it out pretty well.
Yeah, Melissa is taking really good notes for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do that.
Oh, the one reason is when you have a lot of items for evaluation, it's hard to decide. And so if you have for example, it's easier to evaluate the project.
Mm-hmm.
That's really helpful. I think that if we reduce it down to like 4 items, that would be much better for evaluation.
Right. As I said, safety group, access related one, or attractiveness destination type group, and then well coordinated construction, phasing and schedule, whatever, to achieve other 3.
Okay.
And Robert, I thought when you brought up the policy statement, I mean, I think we all strongly agree with that policy statement. We've been through it and thought a lot about it. And so I think at the end, if we take this criteria and make sure it matches that policy statement, I think that would be a good last exercise.
Yeah, so I tried to kind of bring these evaluation criteria from that. So we'll do the double check.
Right.
We'll do the double check, and then let us send this out to you, so you can review those drafts, and then if there are further changes, just email those back. Just reply, and then maybe next time we can adopt. Like you can, kind of vote to adopt this as an evaluation criteria, and then we can start moving on from there.
That sounds great.
I have a question. I appreciate what has been said about how this is clearly a pedestrian priority environment we are trying to establish. Do we want to, we just had a little bit of a discussion about active transportation. I think Clancy, in that final version that summary you gave, you said it's pedestrian, but other modes will be accommodated. Do we want to distinguish kind of a 3-tier system where it's pedestrian, active transportation, and then cars, or do we want to just consider everything that's not pedestrian together as other modes, or do we want to actually specifically talk about active transportation, other kinds of active transportation somewhere?
I think that's a great question, Joy, because I almost would like maybe for next meeting to have a long discussion specifically about bikes and scooters and everything, because to me, biking downtown is most difficult right now because I'm either stuck in a big line behind cars, or I'm illegally riding on the sidewalk, or I can't find a place to park my bike. So I would almost like to have a long discussion about where bikes and scooters fit into all of this in our next meeting, if that's not going to delay anything that needs to be decided.
I think that's a really, really great discussion topic.
Could
I
we
think, yeah, we need to talk about if we want people to be able to get to downtown and then enjoy that. We got to talk about bikes and scooters too, and how they're included, not just slow cars down and make it okay to walk, but there's that middle category as well.
I agree with that, Joy, because we really need to do 7. Yeah, that was Shane's comment. If we don't achieve 7, there will be no reason to go there.
all is lost?
Yeah.
If we have that discussion as a major item for next meeting, Robert, is that okay, or are we delaying anything that needs to happen?
I think that's a great discussion topic.
Okay, let's plan on that for next month then.
And so can I just ask what specifically about scooters would you want, just so I can be prepared for that?
A discussion about how bicycles and scooters and other non-pedestrian active modes fit into Center Street.
I think like an obvious thing, or a thing for me, is like a scooter. If half a mile is pushing it for pedestrians, right? It's on the edge. And so scooters can bridge that. Scooters, the model that we have, can bridge that and can get people from one end of the pedestrian area to the other end. And they're just there. You don't have to bring them. So I think scooters, or something like scooters, whatever it turns into the future, would be an important part for this about a half a mile long segment.
Let's bring back segways. Come on.
So, can I bring up another one?
Well, before we move on, Shane, I'd like to. I think it would be good to kind of, because I've been thinking a lot about access for scooters and bikes down to the Center Street area, and if I could just do a 30 or 60 second, here's where I see the issues are. Maybe it gives people you guys in TMAC an opportunity to think about. Well, I have some ideas to think about before next meeting, I guess, where it may be a more helpful or more thorough discussion. If Robert, am I able to share my screen for just a second, and I'll show you what like I said, just a 30 or 60 second, just some things to think about as we're talking about how do we accommodate.
Just 1 second.
You should be able to now.
Oh, Crystal's got you covered.
All right. So I'm just bringing up a map here. So we have plans. Not everything is in, but we have plans. I mean, Fifth West, just kind of in this overall discussion, Fifth West has just put in bike lanes and a path, a 10-foot path on the east side, which would be the west end of the downtown Center Street area. Third West is a neighborhood bikeway, Sharrows. We don't have that all painted and signed in, but we're moving forward. We have plans moving forward in that direction. First West is another designated corridor. It doesn't quite get you up to Center Street because of the whole New Skin and Temple block, but it gets you close by there. And we've been in very preliminary just the last week or so talks about how we might be able to continue things on First South. Right now they have bike lanes also, and then Second East is our other neighborhood bikeway. And so from the north-south direction, from my viewpoint, the thing that I've been thinking about is from the north-south direction, there's several points of access to Center Street where people could get into, if their destination is Center Street, can get into Center Street. We do need to maybe add some, I know there has been some, but there may be discussion that we need to provide more bicycle parking down in that area, but it gets them to Center Street to where they can hit there as a destination point. And in my viewpoint, the real question is bicycle, and we're specifically trying to make Center Street not a through thing, right? But from my viewpoint as the overall bicycle network goes, Center Street is shown as an active transportation corridor. Going north, you have First North, which is going to become our arterial street. There's really no room to put bicycle facilities on there. Second North is even, that's a collector street, which we do have some. Maybe we can put some bicycle facilities on there, but really our next active transportation corridor, as it's been looked at in the transportation master plan, is Third North, and then going south, our next one that has been designated as an active transportation corridor is Third South. And so, anyways, that's just my thought as we think about ways to accommodate scooter and bike traffic in the downtown area. From my viewpoint, the real important question is trying to figure out, if we don't make it Center Street, where in this downtown area is a good place for bikes to be able to continue their east-west movement.
That's an excellent point, Rob. Thanks for sharing that. We almost kind of have to, because of that, those blocks that are closed in certain places that make it difficult to use anything else. That's a great point.
It's good to remember that there's a new bicycle intersection at 3rd North and 500 West that is usable for bicyclists to go east-west, which is fantastic.
And the only one other thing I just wanted to bring up is how, and I can tell you from a business owner's perspective, it is critical, or at least discussions I've had, and that is parking. How do you, if we're taking off and we are making that, how do you want to deal with vehicle parking?
I agree with David Harding's comment here. I think we've danced around it, but over the years we've really talked about it not just being the businesses, but the outdoors around those businesses. It's the experience. It's the so I like how he put it. So making the environment accommodating to people who are at their outdoor destination, that really captures thinking over multiple years as we've been thinking about it. And Rob, your stuff was really useful. That got me thinking.
I'm going to throw this in the chat for the notes. But I kind of typed up sort of an option of how we could group these. I'm sorry they don't show up great in the notes. But I think, combining what we all have kind of said, I think we could combine those evaluation criteria into four criteria. And I've kind of made a quick attempt at writing those. So I want us to wrap up here in a minute, but I wanted to put that in the chat so people can see it, especially Melissa, who's been taking our notes. Because I think from what we've said, we could get this down to four criteria that captures everything we're discussing. And I did try to kind of add something, because I agree what you said, Dave, that we need to look at all these types of pedestrians, the walking pedestrians and the experiencing pedestrians that are there, eating or doing whatever.
I appreciate you putting that in the chat, Clancy. That's really helpful.
This has been a really great discussion, and I think we've got some great options. So can we, after Melissa digs through these and organizes the notes, can we send another evaluation criteria list before next meeting, Robert? And then we can all, I think we can finalize it next meeting probably, if not sooner through email.
Yeah, I think if we can have it kind of ready to go as like the first item, if people have experienced it, seen it, commented, we can send it back and forth as a draft.
Okay.
And then we'll have plenty of time for a discussion on Center Street as far as the other modes of transportation.
Okay. That sounds great to me.
If anybody else has other items that they think of throughout the month, if you can, and this is just kind of a blanket statement, as you think of those things, if you can send them to me that you'd like to have discussed at TMAC, I just need to have those at least a week before so we can have it on the agenda.
Thanks for that reminder. Any final comments or anything anyone wants to bring up before we close for today?
Robert, I don't know how to say this. I feel like frequently, or at least lately, there have been several important transportation agenda items on the city council's agenda. And I read about those in the news after the fact. But I wonder sometimes if there's a way that we can know, if you know that there's something important coming up, if you ever have a chance to send TMAC an email so we can tune in and watch that more closely, that would, in advance, that would be nice.
Absolutely. I think that's a great comment, Joy, and we will all try to be more vigilant about that.
I hate to give you any extra work to do, but I realized, like, wait, I would have liked to be on during that presentation and watched it, or had a chance to ask a comment in a chat or something. I don't know. And then I read about it later.
Could we ask the city council, the person who owns the agenda, to just notify you so that you don't have to track it so closely? Could we add it to their checklist when because they put things on their agenda, and maybe there's a traffic thing, they could just, we could get notified so that we would know to tune in, and so we're at least up to speed on what they're hearing and what they're thinking.
I'll circle back with staff on that, just to kind of put it on their radar that if there are any things that are related to traffic or transportation or mobility or anything, just kind of, if they think about it and remember to give us a heads up, and I'll try and do the same with the agenda. Dave, if you can.
Because I agree with Joy, it's really useful for us to know what the city council is thinking.
Yeah.
Or if UTA is giving a major presentation on a future freeway interchange, that's something we've been waiting for years. And it's like, oh, I want to know about that. So just, things like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Joy, I'm going to send you a personal email because I'm part of that committee. I will send all committee members a personal, making sure that you personally get invited to those.
Thank you.
That's what we were really waiting for, Shane.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thanks again, everybody. Great discussion today, and let's look for that email with the evaluation criteria so we can finish that at the beginning of next meeting and continue the active modes discussion. Okay.
Great. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.